Welcome to the Coaches Spotlight Podcast, the show where you'll be listening to coaches from around the globe that share their pitfalls and struggles all the way up to what made them successful in their field. Ready to catapult your coaching business past the competition? Then grab your favorite beverage and get ready to listen to meaningful conversations and learn from industry experts. Here's your host, Oliver Momeni.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Our next guest is a former BBC journalist who for the last 20 years has been coaching, provoking, and challenging senior leaders and their teams to rethink what it means to be a leader in the 21st century. She's a 3 times published author, keynote speaker, columnist, and was one of the first professional certified coaches in Europe. Please welcome Blaire Palmer. Glad to have you on the show, Blaire.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Now, we always start off the show with getting an insight from our guests with what they're specialized in and what is the outcome they guide people towards. In other words, what is your signature coaching program?
Well, I'm a leadership specialist. So what kind of leaders do we need today? What is the future of leadership? What kind of leaders will we need tomorrow? And I've been working in this field for about 20 years. So I've developed my own ideas based on working with a lot of leaders over that time about what works and what doesn't, and how some of the conventional wisdom about leadership is theoretically makes perfect sense, but when you try to apply it in a real corporate environment, it does not work. So that's really what I do. I work with senior leaders one-to-one, boards, senior teams, senior leadership teams, and I'm also a keynote speaker, and it's all focused on helping those clients and those audiences to rethink what kind of leadership we actually need, what kind of leadership we need from them, and then start to make those shifts themselves so that they can be prepared for what is coming at them.
So if you want to find out more about Blaire's program, then head on over to thatpeoplething.com. Now, before we move on, for those of you that are a coach or a consultant, or you want to become one and have not created your signature program yet, then you're leaving a ton of money on the table. But no worries, I got you covered. My team and I have put together a guide that teaches exactly how to design your signature program. The exercises throughout the guide will systematically help you in creating a successful program all the way up to how much to charge for it. So if you want to grab a free copy of this guide, then head on over to coachesspotlight.com/guide. That's coachesspotlight.com/guide. Blaire, share with us a success quote or mantra and an example of how you've applied its meaning in your life.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this earlier on today, and I thought of something that my dad always used to say to me, which is, don't hide your light under a bushel, which I don't know, have you heard that phrase before?
No, tell me more.
Well, a bushel, I think, is a kind of basket, like a woven basket. And so the idea is that you would hide your light, what's special about you, underneath this basket, and no one would be able to see it. And so my dad's advice always was not to do that. And I think that's really important. I think that's important for coaches. We can be quite modest. We don't want to make it all about us. We don't necessarily like selling or, bigging ourselves up too much. So we might hide our own light. But also I think it's really important for our clients that we encourage them to be out there in the world and to let their light shine, whatever it is. It doesn't mean showing off. It doesn't mean being a massive personality. It doesn't mean having tons of charisma, being extrovert. It doesn't have to mean that. But whatever the light is within you, why would you hide it? It's the thing that makes you special. And so I'm always encouraging my clients to work out, well, what is that for them? What is, if we're talking about being authentic, if we're talking about being themselves, if we're talking about connecting at a human level with the people that they work with and that work for them, what is it? What is that light that they're bringing? And how can they double down on that? How can they enhance the light that they spread rather than be afraid of it or slightly shy about it and hide it under a bushel?
Interesting quote. Specifically how it's worded. Fact of the matter is, we all have a unique fingerprint in how we do and see things, right? Everybody has a unique way in how to deal and overcome things in life. I always say we're all experts in something because we have lived a life that has only been seen through our eyes and nobody else's. Therefore, each and every one of us can position themselves as an expert to anybody. And I'm not saying we should all try to make money with our knowledge, although we probably could. But at least record a video and upload it to YouTube. I assure you, you will have people that are interested in your point of view or how you do something. Now let's talk about something totally different, Blaire. Share with us a story where you've experienced failure. Take us to that exact time in your life and tell us that story and share your lessons learned.
Well, I have to tell you that there have been a number of times where my business has almost crashed and burned. I think it's a myth that, that the toughest years are the first year or two. Actually, if you've been in business like I have for 20 years, it's a roller coaster. And you can find yourself looking down the barrel of a really bad cash flow 8 years in or 12 years in or 19 years in. All of that can happen. So I have many, many choices of failures. Although, they weren't really failures because I recovered and I'm still here. So in a way, they're not failures. But I think the biggest one was I used to be in business with a business partner. And I'd been running my own business for a few years at that point, and then we decided to go into business together, and we landed very quickly a massive project, massive change program for an insurance company, and that really kept us going for 18 months. It was fantastic. But of course, during that time, we were so busy with the project that we didn't really pay attention to where the next work was going to come from. And so, that's my dog. One of my many dogs in the background.
You said you had two, right? You had two? Or
Yeah,
more?
Got two dogs. And,
right.
Crazy here. It's one of the wonders of working from home. But anyway, so
Blaire, sorry, excuse me, what business was that exactly?
It was another coaching business where I don't want to say its name because the business partner.
Don't worry.
But we were doing lots and lots of, the idea was to help individuals and organizations through change.
Okay.
And we were very successfully doing that with this one client, but weren't really looking at our pipeline. And we got to the end of that project, towards the end of that project, and realized there was no business in the pipeline. And very quickly, things got bad. We burnt through the cash very fast. We had invested in lots of technology to help this client, which we knew nothing about. So the project, which was huge, we're talking 7 figures big, ended up not being profitable at all. So we didn't even have money left over at the end of that to see us through the next few months. In fact, we owed people money.
Oops.
And so we nearly went out of business, and he and I decided to go our separate ways. And it was at that point that I set up that People Thing, which is the business that I still run today. But starting from nothing, we have less than no money because we had associates working with us, associate coaches. We owed them for the work that they had done with us, with this big client. Things looked very, very bleak. And I remember sitting in the car park of our offices, on the phone to my dad, sitting on the tarmac of the car park, on the phone to my dad saying, "Dad, I think I owe some people £100,000. And if I don't get a new contract soon with a client, I don't know how I'm going to pay them." And he was amazing. He said, "Listen, we will not let you go under. We will find a way to help you." Now, as it happened, fortuitously, we landed £100,000 project. And we were able, it was so fortunate, we were able to pay our associates, and then I basically did that project myself. I spread myself very thin, and I delivered it myself because there was no money left in it for me to pay anybody else to help me. And then, bit by bit, I rebuilt that business. But I think, there are lots of lessons in that. One was never neglect your pipeline. Even if you're busy with current clients, always be looking after your network, always be making sure that you're having real conversations about real work that you could do with them when you have the time. Having a waiting list is fine. Book them up for the time that this thing finishes that's keeping you so busy. So that was one thing. But the other thing was, we were delivering some of our change program online. And what we should have done is found a platform that already did something like that and created the content and stuck it on that platform. And instead, what we decided to do was to build our own platform. And that was just a big nightmare. And what I learned, that's what cost all the money. And what I learned from that was do what you know how to do. Stretch yourself by all means, but basically focus on what you know how to do and get other people to provide the bits of the solution that you don't understand about, which in our case was the tech and creating this learning platform. We really had no business meddling in that area, and it cost us a lot of money. And in the end, it cost us that business that we had together.
Real entrepreneurs are resilient and bounce back from setbacks, who can recover quickly from difficult conditions and see failure as just a temporary condition. I use the word failure on purpose when I ask my guests this question because I want to see how you guys turn it into something positive. We should not forget, failing actually doesn't exist, no matter what we do, because every time we fail, it brings us one step closer in reaching our goal. And that's a fact, no matter how you look at it when you get defeated. Which leads me to ask you, Blaire, why did you start coaching? And share with us the one thing you wish you would have done differently before you began your career as a coach.
Well, my first career was as a journalist. I worked at the BBC for about 10 years before I became a coach. And it was while I was working at the BBC, we interviewed someone who was a life coach. This was back in 1999. We interviewed someone who was a life coach, and I thought this sounded amazing. I was pretty unhappy in my job. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I'd worked very hard to get this very prestigious job at the BBC, and when I started doing it, I didn't really enjoy it. This idea of coaching, I just really understood it. I really understood what this was and how it could help people. When I'd been at university, I had been a student counsellor, volunteering as a student counsellor, so students counselling other students. And we were trained by an organisation in the UK called the Samaritans, which is, again, a voluntary organisation that anyone can just call in, and one of these Samaritans will talk to you. And in fact, what they'll do is listen, and they won't judge, and they will ask you non-directive questions. So basically, I had that training when I was 19 years old. So, fast forward another 10 years, and I heard about coaching, and it sounded like, wow, it's a lot like what I did with this training that I had from the Samaritans. It was my way out. It was my way out of this job that I'd wanted to do since I was a kid that I was no longer enjoying. So I started my business in 2000. I started training as a coach at the beginning of 2000. And then I left the BBC in September of that year. And I mean, in a way, I think you have to learn these lessons yourself. There's nothing anyone could have told me. In fact, they probably did tell me that would have helped me more than learning the lessons for myself, facing up to, as you said, these kind of moments of failure or perceived failure, and figuring it out as I went. And I think that the difference between failure and a kind of learning experience is what you do when you hit that, when the rubber hits the road. Do you give up and go back to your day job, or do you say no, onwards and upwards? And I think I've always said onwards and upwards. There's never been a plan B. There's never been I'll get another job. It's just not possible, I don't think, for me anymore. And so the only thing I think would have been useful for me to have been told at the beginning was to get used to being afraid. The fear never goes away. The fear of losing your business, the fear of making a big mistake, those fears never go away. So you can learn to become friends with the fear, to acknowledge it's going to be part of the way that you live from time to time, not every day, obviously, that would be horrible. But there are going to be moments where you think this is all going badly wrong, or what will we do next month? I don't know how to pay myself or pay my people. And that you're just going to become really good at dealing with that. And I think, in the situation that we're in now, where there's a lot of fear around, there has been for a few years, but there's particular fear around at the moment. I wonder if, having faced up to a lot of those fears over the last 20 years, I am maybe a bit more resilient, and it doesn't worry me as much as maybe somebody who has been quite protected and quite comfortable for the last 20 years and never really had to face their fears.
I see a lot of people saying we should overcome fear or try to eliminate it, which actually means not to face it and jump over it. And I believe that's the worst way to approach how to deal with fear. The art is to know how to dance with fear, as fear belongs to one of our senses, and it's not supposed to go away, as it helps to protect us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't really believe when people say they're not afraid. I think it doesn't necessarily manifest as fear. It can look like something else. But ultimately, I think that fear sits behind a lot of people's behavior, particularly behavior that doesn't seem to make any sense, or that is unpleasant in some way. And so when we're behaving in unpleasant ways, then we can pretty much guarantee that at the deepest level, we're afraid of something. And
absolutely,
look at, well, what is that? What is the fear?
So true. Now I would like that you share a story when you had an aha moment. Take us back to that very moment and share with us the steps you took to turn that moment into success.
Yeah, well, I was talking about the business that went wrong. And I remember sitting with my team. I had a small team at that time, and I had decided, my business partner and I decided to go a separate way. And so I'm sitting with my team and saying, okay, well, we need to invent a new business here. And my business partner had been a keynote speaker and an author. And so he had a very, very big profile in the business world. And so our business had kind of leveraged off the back of that. And I was sitting there with my team, and I suddenly said, hang on a minute, I've written a book. And in fact, I had written 2, if not 3 books at that time. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, there's no reason why I shouldn't have that kind of profile. There's no reason why I shouldn't become a speaker. There's no reason why I shouldn't leverage this expertise that I have, my own IP in a way, that the books that I've written, and turn that into programs. For companies, we can carry on running these programs, but just with a different company name. And that was a massive, I think, realization that, I always thought that some other people had some special quality that I didn't have, and that I would always be a sort of middle tier at whatever I did. I mean, there's no reason to think that. When I was at the BBC, I worked on the biggest news program in the country, but I wasn't the top of that team. I was the middle of that team working on the biggest program in the country, radio news program. So I'd never really felt like I'm the top of anything. And this was a realization that said, there's no reason why I can't do what he does.
Exactly.
And so I started, there's no reason. So I started putting myself out there, changed the company name, started putting myself out there as a keynote speaker, got a really good response, and started making a name, my own name for myself, as opposed to sitting in the shadows of somebody else.
Well done. Well done. Blaire, what is the common myth about being a leadership coach that you want to debunk?
It is the myth is that you need a lot of accreditations and tools in order to be of value to your clients. So one of the things that I see with newish coaches is, apart from their coach training, they also take a lot of accreditation. So in various psychometric tools and various feedback tools, and they're always on some course, and they're always throwing more and more money at these courses. And then when you read their bio or their CV, it's all of these different accreditations that they have from all these different colleges and schools. And oh my goodness, it really drives me round the bend, that stuff. And there's a few reasons. Firstly, I don't want to see new coaches spending too much money on more courses. Make some money. You know, you can only invest when you have money to invest. And any money that you invest in your business, you have to be able to say to yourself, what is the return on investment for this? You know, if this course is costing me $1,000, how do I get 1,001 back from it?
Correct.
And how quickly can I do that? So the more accreditations you have, the more difficult it becomes to get your return on investment back. You're just making money then for the next few years just to pay for all the courses that you did. So that's one of the things that annoys me. The other thing that annoys me is it doesn't differentiate you. It makes you look like everybody else. And I'm pretty fed up, you know, because I'm now relatively well known in the industry, and for a while I had a big team of associates. I would get approached quite a lot by new coaches who would say, I'm accredited in this, that, and the other. I'd like to be an associate of yours. Have you got any business? And I would think, well, what's special about you? I get, and this sounds very cruel actually when I say it like that, but I really did think that what is special? You've just told me all the accreditations that everybody else who calls me up has. I can't sell you to a client if you don't have anything special. And so I'd really encourage coaches to think about not how many accreditations they can get, but what is their sweet spot? What is their niche? Mm-hmm. And how can they absolutely become the leading authority in that thing? And it isn't about qualifications. It's about deep diving into that pool of knowledge and into that world and being able to call up someone like me and say, I'll tell you why I should be on your team, because I'm the only person in the UK or in the Europe or in the world who has this particular combination of experiences that helps this particular set of clients in these very, very powerful ways. And if I already know someone or 10, 20 other people that can tell that same story, I'm not interested. But if you're the only one who can tell that story to me and it fits with my own niche and my clients' needs, then you're on my books.
Couldn't agree with you more, Blaire. It's all about pinpointing what differentiates us from others that are in the same industry. Specifically, when we talk about coaches that offer the so-called free strategy call. Who cares that it's free? The prospect has no clue what a strategy or discovery call is anyway, unless you give it a title. I always say to my clients, if you don't name your strategy call, then you're one of many that offer the same call. So to set yourself apart from all other coaches out there is to give your strategy call a proper title. So when the prospect sees it, they can say, okay, so that's what the call is about. For example, lose 5 pounds by next week strategy call. It needs to be something tangible that the prospect can walk away with, regardless if they join your program or not. Blaire, do you see it as a requirement being certified as a coach, or do you think people can start their coaching business and get certified later on?
I think you have to start your coaching business and then get certified later, because you need to have the hours under your belt in order to get the certification. So what I would say is, I think that a fundamental training in coaching is really valuable. You know, everyone thinks they're a coach now, and the idea of what it is to be a coach has really become very confused over the last couple of decades, I would say. So doing a really well-recognized, high-quality program, not a weekend, not, you know, a couple of weekends in a nice hotel retreat center somewhere, you know, for $100, not that, but doing a really solid, accredited training program over a period of ideally a couple of years, whilst you're working with real clients, is, I would say, a fundamental grounding in what you're going to be doing. Working with those clients, when I first worked with my first clients, I didn't charge them anything. I didn't charge them money, but I did say to them, I need something that's more important than money to me right now, which is I need your critique. So at the end of each of our coaching sessions, we'll set aside 10 minutes for you to tell me what worked well, what worked less well, any other feedback you had for me, what you would like to do differently or what you'd like me to do differently next time. And that was much more valuable to me than money. Within a couple of years, I had enough hours and enough sort of foundational stuff to get professional certified coach with the ICF. I was one of the first 20 coaches in Europe, I think, to get that accreditation. So I think those things were important, but none of them make you a good coach. None of them prove that you can do what you say you can do. The only thing that proves it is actual track record, working with real clients who've had an actual transformation as a result. And so, of course, you must work with real people. And you must allow yourself to be bad at it. You must take risks, try things that were not on the course and see what happens. Try things that you were on the course that you did, but you think, I'll never try that because, it's too uncomfortable. There's a question that was on the program that I went on, which is, so someone says, you ask them a question, they say, I don't know what to do about that. And the question is, well, if you did know what to do, what would that be? Mm. And I always thought to myself, I'm never going to ask that question. It's terrible. But I was brave enough a number of times to say, I can't think of another question, so I'll ask that. And it was such a powerful question. You take a risk. I've also asked questions that haven't worked, that have landed really flat and where the client's been very confused. So I think you have to do that. You have to risk it. You have to try new things. And over time, you get some very, very good instincts about what is the right question to ask.
One thing is for sure, no certification is going to get anybody magically new clients. Did you know 87% of coaches or consultants from around the globe go out of business in their first year? And the main reason why they go out of business is because they didn't figure out how to generate a steady stream of new clients. Therefore, my team and I have created a workshop that outlines exactly what we do to generate a consistent stream of new clients month in, month out for our business and for our clients. So if you're a coach or consultant and you're committed to changing more lives with your expertise, then I encourage you to register for the free masterclass. Just imagine to never wonder where your next clients are going to come from next month. And all you need to do to make that a reality is head over to clientsindroves.com. That's clientsindroves.com and register for the free training. Blaire, what do you believe is the number one mistake other leadership coaches are making nowadays that is keeping them from growing their business?
Yeah, this is something a bit different. This is undercharging or trying to undercut the market. So one of the things that I see more and more now is very, very cheap coaches. And coaches who claim to want to work with senior leaders like I do, but they're going to charge very, very little for it. Now, they might think they're being clever because they might think, well, I'll get picked for this because I'm cheap or cheaper. But it's very damaging. For one reason, if you don't value yourself as a coach, what business do you have coaching senior leaders to value themselves as leaders? I mean,
exactly.
You have to have the sort of confidence in your own value that you ultimately want your clients to have in their value. So the first thing is about modeling it, right, yourself. But also you end up destroying the industry, because one of the things that I've seen is that coaches, even coaches that have quite a lot of work, can't make a living. They end up having to subsidize their coaching income with other income. Yes. Consulting or a part-time job, yes. Or maybe their husband is, supporting them or whatever.
Absolutely.
And when they share with me their hourly rate, I think, well, you won't be able to make a living. You'll be lucky to make £20,000 a year from that. And some people will say, £20,000 is fine. And no, £100,000 is fine. Mm-hmm. Because you're running a business. Mm-hmm. The 20,000 is okay as a part-time salary for a full-time, for a steady job, but it's not okay to run a business. You need to be hitting those six figures at least to run a business and to have some cash flow and be able to look into next year and feel confident that you're going to have a business in 12 months' time. So you can't charge £50 an hour. You have to be charging 250, 500 an hour. You have to be charging 3,000 a day, something like that. And then you have to think about, and what am I selling that's not my time? Because also you hit a limit on how much time you can sell, right? Please don't undercut the market. It does no one any favors. It doesn't help our industry. It makes our industry look unprofessional. And it's not good for your clients. It's not good for their faith in you, and it makes it impossible to make a living. And so you can't do the thing you love to do in the end.
But if these coaches undercharge, they're not only harming the industry, they're harming their business. When I talk to my clients about how to price their coaching program, I always take the relationship coach as an example. So I say to them, imagine being married for over 20 years, but your marriage is falling apart. To which coach are you going to go? The one that charges $50 or pounds an hour, or the one that charges $500 an hour? And I always get the same answer. We value things more the higher they are priced, let it be coaching or a car, etc., etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Blaire, are you ready for the Thunder Round?
Yes.
All right. If you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't, and what would the answer be to that question?
Well, I would ask myself, or I would ask you, how can I create a business that's not purely about selling my time for money?
Was there anything holding you back from becoming a coach? And if so, what was it exactly?
I think it was fear of the uncertainty. So the fear that I would end up living in a box underneath a bridge, and not taking myself seriously enough. I don't think I took myself as seriously at the beginning as I do now.
If you could go back in time and meet the 20-year-old Blaire, what advice would you give yourself?
I would tell myself to do a job that I would enjoy, not necessarily one that I thought had status and kudos in the world.
What is one thing most people don't know about you?
I grew up on a small holding on a little farm, and I am qualified to lamb sheep.
Uh-huh. If you could meet one person you have not met yet, what would you ask them, or what would you want to know from them?
Well, I would want to speak to anyone who seems to have a kind of inner confidence to do it their way. So someone like Jacinda Ardern, in the New Zealand Prime Minister, and I would ask her how she stops herself being influenced by convention and the pressure to conform, how she maintains that authenticity in high office.
What is the best advice you have ever received?
When one door closes, another one opens.
Now, before I ask you what your favorite book is, tell us about your books, which are called What's Wrong with Work, The Hyper-Creative Personality, and The Recipe for Success.
I wrote my first book, I can't quite remember when it was, 2007 maybe, Hyper-Creative Personality, and that was really, it's in the title, but it's really about people like me who have brilliant ideas. There were lots of books at the time around about how to be more creative, and I thought, hang on a minute, the problem is not how to have more ideas for me and people like me, it's what to do with all the millions of brilliant ideas that we're having every day, and we never get much further than that. So I wrote the Hyper-Creative Personality to try to define that character and then say, okay, here are some strategies for actually leaning into the benefits of that, the advantages of those qualities, but minimizing some of the downsides, like everything is half finished and you get bored with it very quickly and then you move on to something else. So that was the first one. Then The Recipe for Success. Again, there were lots of books at the time about people sort of reverse engineering their own success and saying, this is how I became the multimillionaire success story that I am today, and if you follow my rules, you'll become this too. And I thought that sounded too simplistic. I don't know if you can reverse engineer your own success. It's too many unquantifiable things that you can't pass on. So instead, I decided to interview lots of different people who were successes in various different ways and see if there were themes. And I did discover some ingredients that all of these people from diverse fields had in common. So that was the recipe for success. And then the final one was What's Wrong with Work? And that was born out of my frustration with so many books telling us how to lead, how to manage, how to have great meetings, all of these things. And I had tried a lot of those things and they had not worked. So I thought, let me actually look down into my experience and be honest with myself about what does work and what doesn't work, and what's actually wrong with the way that we work, fundamentally wrong, and what needs to change. And this, I mean, that was, I can't remember the year, but maybe about 2010, something like that, I wrote that book. So quite a long time ago. But I think that it sort of predates a lot of what we're seeing now around reinventing the way that we work, flexible working, remote working, non-hierarchical organizations, holacracy, a lot of this stuff. I didn't know about at the time that I wrote that book, but it was a sense that something fundamentally had to change with how we work and how we treat people in the workplace.
So true. Then share with us, what is your favorite book and why?
Well, I've chosen two. One is the novel Pride and Prejudice. Just love that book. And we live in Bath, which Jane Austen lived in Bath in the UK when she was writing some of her books. So, I feel quite connected. But from a professional perspective, an amazing book by a guy called Frederick Laloux called Reinventing Organizations, which was one of those books that I read a few years ago, really, really made me rethink why most change programs in organizations don't work and why hierarchy is a problem in organizations. And it radically changed my ideas about what organizations can look like, building on the work that I had done for my book, actually.
Then let's wrap up this podcast with the last question, and then we'll say goodbye. Who do you specifically work with, and who should contact you if they want to work with you? Basically, who is your ideal client, Blaire?
All right. So my ideal client tends to be a very senior leader in a large corporate, or a founder of their own business. So they're leading other people from the top of their organization. And funnily enough, and this is just how it happens, they tend to be men, and they tend to be men who feel slightly out of sync with the prevailing culture. So they see this quite macho, command and control, logical approach around them in their culture, but they feel more human and more instinctive, and that they want to connect more and show more of who they are, but they don't necessarily know how to do that, and particularly when the prevailing culture is so misunderstands that so much. So those tend to be my clients, the good guys, the good guys in a culture or in an industry that doesn't necessarily value that style of leadership. And what I will help them to do is to figure out how to turn that, so not to become something different, but to become even more of who they are and use that as their kind of superpower.
So if you want to connect with Blaire, head on over to thatpeoplething.com or visit coachesspotlight.com and type Blaire in the search bar, and you'll find the show notes to this episode and all the links that lead to Blaire. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Blaire, it was a real pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Coaches Spotlight podcast. If you liked the show, then please make sure to rate us, leave a review and subscribe. We appreciate your support. See you next time.